All right, guys, for today's lesson, you're going to need your workbook starting on page 34. Okay, so everybody turn to page 34, and this is 1-5. So today's topic, we're going to talk about perfect squares as well as what's called perfect cubes. Okay, example 1 says Darius is restoring a square tabletop. He wants to finish the outside edges with a piece of decorative molding. What total length of molding will Darius need? And down below we have the tabletop, and the big A refers to area, so we know that means area. And then we see the area of this tabletop is equal to 25 feet squared. Okay, over here, draw a diagram to represent the tabletop. Well, again, they placed the area equals 25 feet squared, and then on the side, they put S and S, which obviously stands for side. Okay, so the area of a square is simply take side times side, which we see represented here by S squared. So side squared equals area. Okay, if we want to find the side of this square, well, you got to think of a number that's multiplied by itself. It's got to be the exact same number to equal A. In this case, we're thinking of a number multiplied by itself to equal 25. And I think most of us can already come up with that number, but down here, if you didn't know, to solve it, we take the square root. Okay, you take the square root of the area on the left side, which means you also have to take the square root of S squared over here. Okay, when you take the square root of S squared, what comes out is just one S, which represents one side. Okay, over here, the square root of 25, they have two different answers. They have a positive 5 and they have a negative 5 going here. Okay, the reason for that is because 5 times 5 does equal 25. But negative 5 times negative 5 also equals 25. Okay, so when you see this, they're saying the side can be equal to positive 5 or negative 5. So it would be pronounced like positive 5 or negative 5 or plus or minus 5. Okay, again, if we wanted to use our calculator and we go ahead, type in the square root, so second, and we hit the square root key, make sure it's this one and not, there's a different one you'll see in a minute. 25 equals. You see, it doesn't give us the negative answer, it's only going to give you the positive answer, okay? The positive answer is called the principal square root. So again, you're only going to get the positive answer when you use your calculator. All right, if we come down below here to the triad section, on the triad section, we're given something similar. It says, what's the side length of the square below? A is equal to 100 meters squared. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and come over here. A is equal to S squared. Well, S squared is equal to 100. Because that's what the area was. Okay, so then down below, next thing we're going to do is we would take the square root of 100. So the square root of 100 equals the square root of S squared. Again, when you take the square root of S squared, out comes just one S, and that's what you wanted because you wanted to figure out what one side length of the square would be. Okay, so we figure out what's the square root of 100. Well, what times what's 100? Same number, we know it's 10. But again, we talked about up top there, it could be positive 10, it could be negative 10. Okay, something we forgot to mention though, when we're talking about real world problems like up above there with the tabletop, you can't have a negative length. So in this case, we would only use the positive answer. Okay, so we know that this side length is 5, that side length is 5. And the question asks, what was the total length of molding that he's going to need? Well, that's the edge here, but you also have an edge here, an edge here. And we know all those edges are going to be 5. So 5 plus 5 plus 5 plus 5 is where Darius comes up with 20 feet of molding he would need. Okay, down below here, we have this square. So we're going to say each side of the square measures 10 meters. Okay, and we're only going to use the positive one on this one because It's a square, so it has to have a length. It can't have a negative length. Okay, convince me, why are there two possible solutions to the equation s squared equals 100? Two solutions because 10 times 10 equals 100 and negative 10 times negative 10 equals 100. Okay, but this next part, explain why only one of the solutions is valid for this problem. Well, we just mentioned that squares have to have a positive length. So it's a real-world problem. We got a square. You can't have a negative length on a square. So in this case, we would only use the positive answer. Okay, coming over here to example 2. So example 2 states, Kyle has a large cube-shaped terrarium for his iguana. He wants to cover the dimension with the square screen. What are the dimensions S for the screen? And here we have V, big V, which that stands for volume. And it's a three-dimensional object, which is why we're getting this label of a 3 here for feet cubed. So this terrarium is 343 feet cubed. Okay, the volume for a cube would be V equals S cubed. So volume equals side cubed, or side to the third power. Okay, and we see how they're solving this. Instead of using a square root, I want you to pay attention to this. It's this symbol. This is called a cube root because that 3 there. Okay, so what they do is they just take the cube root of 343, the cube root of S cubed, out comes S. All right, now that's a different operation on your calculator. So basically you got to think of a number that's multiplied by itself 3 times to equal this. And that number is going to be 7, because 7 times 7 times 7 is 343. But if you didn't know that, here's what you would do. You would start off, and you have to hit this 3. This 3 is going to represent this cube root, okay? So the 3, and then we hit second. But it's a different key. It's not the square root anymore. It's this x root key. So to get to this x root key, you got to hit this, what we call the caret key. So it should look like this, 3. So this means the cube root. When you see that, it's got to have that x there. And then you push 343 equals, and it gives you the answer of 7. Okay, now, in this case, there is not plus or minus 7 like it was over there. All right, the reason for that is because 7 times 7 times 7 is 343. But if I did negative 7 times negative 7 times negative 7, you would get an answer of negative 343, which is not what we started with. So cube roots only have one answer, and it's just the positive one there, since it was a positive number to start with. Okay, so each edge of the terrarium is 7 feet. Okay, so the dimensions of the screen have to be 7 by 7. So it's 7 feet by 7 feet. All right, we go down to try it. So x cubed is equal to 64. All right, so what we do to solve this, if we showed the work for it, we would write it out. And then to undo this, we do the cube root. Okay, when you undo that, out is going to come up x. To undo this, you do the cube root, because you got to do the same thing that you do left to right side. Okay, so if you can think of a number multiplied by itself 3 times equals 64, great. If not, let's try it one more time on here. So we're going to go ahead and clear it. Okay, so I'm going to push 3, second. Remember, we need the caret key to get to that x root. And then we're going to push 64 equals. So we see the cube root of 64 is going to equal 4. So x is equal to 4. Okay, very easy to check my work because all I do is I take that 4 times 4 times 4, and I can go ahead and see, does that actually equal 64? So 4 times 4 times 4, it does, so we know we solved it correctly. Okay, example 3. It says solve for x. Now, we see x squared is equal to 50. And it says 50 is not a perfect square. Okay, it's not a perfect square because you can't think of a number multiplied by itself equaling 50. All right, so what we're going to do, if I type in, just to double check, square root, because it's a square root, not a cube root, 50, we get a decimal answer. Okay, so we get this decimal answer, and today they don't want the decimal answers. They want you to write it using the square root symbol. Because this does not simplify down to a whole number answer, they say your final answer is the square root of 50, but again, it can be a positive, it can be a negative. It's got two answers. Okay, so the answer x squared equals 50 is going to be positive square root 50 and negative square root 50. Okay, coming over here to letter B. X cubed equals 37. So we ask ourselves, is that a perfect cube? Is there a number multiplied by itself equaling 37? In this case, there's not, but we can check. So again, we would do 3 second, and you have to hit the caret key to get that x root, and you would type 37 equals. And we get a decimal answer. So that decimal answer means it's not a perfect cube. Okay, if it's not a perfect cube, again, they don't want you to write with decimal form. They want you to write with the root symbol. So they say the answer is just the cube root of 37. Again, there's only one answer. There's not two because this was a positive number to start with. So I get a positive answer there. Okay, you guys go ahead and try A and B. And that's it.